Okay, 12章。Shakyamuni Buddha, out of vast benevolence, instructed Queen Vaidehi, leading her to select from among all the lands manifested in the pedestal of light, Amida's world of happiness. Ondoku Kodai Shakanyorai, Idai Bunin ni chokushite zo, Kodai Genkoku no sono naka ni, Anraku sekai o erabashimu to. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Well, good morning, everyone. Last week was the National Council meeting, and it was the first time that we held this meeting entirely online. And so if you don't know what this is, all the temple's kind of representatives come and meet at this meeting, this kind of big gathering that we do every year, just to kind of hash out some kind of business details and temple issues and stuff like that. So as it turns out, the Bay District, which Southern Alameda County Buddhist Church, SACBC, is part of, the Bay District was in charge of this event this year. So, and all in all, it went very well. I think it was very successful. Many of the videos, as Karen has mentioned, the Eitaikyo service, as well as the Sunday afternoon program, is now viewable online. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, please feel free to watch it. Our past bishop, Reverend Kodo Umezu, was the guest speaker for the Eitaikyo service, and he gave such a wonderful message. It was very moving to hear his Dharma talk. I know I cried, and it was very good. It was nice. And in addition, there were 4 retired Kaikyoshi minister this year, and they each also gave a message, and it's wrapped into this one long message called a Dharmathon, we call it now. So that's also very nice. And each minister gave a nice kind of message that wrapped up their careers, and they were very heartfelt. So that was very nice. And then on Sunday, we have the keynote speaker who goes by the name of Regina Boone, and she talks about tracing her family history back to Japan. And her story is absolutely fascinating. If you might have seen it, there's a story on it on NHK. There was a documentary about her story and how she traces back her family all the way back to Japan. It's a very, very fascinating story, very touching story, and it really shows the truth of the principle of goen, causes and conditions, and that we are really here through all of our connections, and the more that we see these connections, the more we see just how much this life is really precious, and really the only thing we can do is to humbly put our hands together in gassho and deep gratitude for this life that we have been given. Anyway, so I definitely recommend that. So the continuing on, the other day I came a very important kind of understanding, which is that every week for service, myself or my wife will prepare I don't know if you can see, it's the obuppan, which the osonai, right? Which is the flour, the rice offering that we give to the obutsudan. And so one particular morning, not today, but in a one particular morning, the obuppan wasn't ready, right? And so frantically, I got mad at my wife, and I asked her, why didn't she prepare the rice, but eventually I came to realize that over the past few weeks that my wife was preparing the obuppan, every time, right? Until I gradually expected her to make the rice, right? However, I'm the actual one who's supposed to be the one that should be preparing the obuppan, right? And so when I came to this realization, I recognized not just how much my wife does for me to make my life easier, but also how much I don't see or choose not to see the negative aspects about myself, and so I tend to get very frustrated very easily. And so in one of the 3 Pure Land Sutras, known as the Contemplation Sutra, there is a story about this queen, and her name is Queen Vaidehi. This takes place in India, so the names are a little bit foreign, so it's hard to remember. But this queen has an interaction with Shakyamuni Buddha, and what happened was, this queen's son, his name is Ajatashatru, he's the prince, okay? And the prince was influenced by kind of this warui, bad person, right? And his name was Devadatta, okay? And so the son, Devadatta, convinces the son to kill his parents, Queen Vaidehi and the father, the king, right? In order to take over the throne, usurp the throne, right? And so he kills his father. But as he was trying to kill Queen Vaidehi, his mother, these priests were around and they convinced him not to do that. They said, "Don't kill your mother. That's like, you can't do that. That's the one big no-no you cannot do," right? As if killing the father was okay. But anyway, and so he doesn't kill the mother. He instead imprisons her and he puts her in a jail, right? And so the queen is, she's very sad, she doesn't know what to do. So she pleads to Shakyamuni to come over and teach her, a way to find happiness. And so the Buddha comes to see her, and the Buddha says, and he hears her story, but in her resentment of the whole situation and what has happened, she asks the Buddha, she says, "By the way, aren't you related to Devadatta, the person who persuaded my son to commit these evil actions," right? And so basically she's saying, aren't you kind of involved in this situation, right? And so from this quote, we can interpret it to mean that she was kind of accusing the Buddha of somehow being indirectly involved or responsible for her suffering. So she was showing her resentment towards the Buddha, accusing him kind of wrongdoing, even though he had nothing to do with her problems, right? And so essentially, Vaidehi tries to throw her problems onto Shakyamuni Buddha and tries to hold him responsible for the wretched situation that she finds herself in. And it's a very interesting story that comes up in one of our sutras. So oftentimes, it's easy for us to see only what is on the surface and quickly make judgments based off of those superficial observations. I may take one look and see that the obupang, right, is not prepared and think to myself, it's because my wife is still sleeping or that she forgot, right? And I will accuse her of my own problem. The problem is hardly, it's never me. I'm never the problem. In other case, when I see that something is missing, right, I cannot find it, and I'm quick to think that someone came by and stole something of mine, right? Or that, and I think that someone stole it, but actually I just misplaced it and I put it somewhere else, right? So that happens to me often. So it's never my first thought that I have, used it, misplaced it. I always think, or, someone stole my, possessions, right? And on a much broader scale, I think we often hear, that immigrants, right, are the problem, and that our country would be much better off if it wasn't for the moochers who are disrupting our system and our way of life, right? It is easy to accuse and point the finger at others for our problems, when really the issues of our society are much more complicated than singling out a specific group of people. It's easy to say, these immigrants are bad, right? These people are the problem, because by doing so, it makes me feel that I am not a part of the problem, right? It's never me that may be part of the problem. It's always someone else, right, that is the cause for my problems. And this way of thinking is what Buddhists try to shy away from, and what Buddhists try to call into question. Is this really, the right way of looking at things? Buddhism asks us. So the point here is not to beat ourselves up over, or to be overcritical of ourselves, right, to the point of depression. But Buddhism does teach us that spiritual liberation does involve being honest with ourselves, to see the imperfect self and the depths of our attachments. One time I went over to a friend's house to eat dinner, and we were eating and having a great time. And at some point in the evening, I go to the bathroom a lot. So I went to the bathroom, and then I came back and I didn't think of it, anything of it. And I went on enjoying the night. Well, after some time, one of my friends came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm really sorry to point this out to you, but your fly is open." So I don't know. What do they say in Japanese? 世界の窓口が開いてる, right? Is that what they say? Yeah, yeah. So, so チャックが開いてる. And so my fly was open. And the whole time I was talking, and then I looked down and I saw, I noticed my fly was open. I was very embarrassed, that my fly was down. And unbeknownst to me, the whole time it was down, and I had no idea. And I would have kept going on and on and on if it wasn't for someone pointing out to me that my fly was open or fly was down. And I think really life is in this way, it's very similar, right? We go about thinking we are right and that we are always, doing everything right, and that we're extremely proud and we think we're always, right? We actually we need to kind of think this way in our society, right? In order to make it in this world, we need to have this degree of confidence in ourselves, right? So we walk around thinking, yeah, I got this, I've got this world figured out, right? So, and I'm going places, I know these people, right? I am the one who has this world figured out. And the whole time you're nodding your head and thinking this, other people are looking around and say, get a load of this guy, his fly is open. And so it's a very embarrassing thing. So in terms of our spiritual lives, I think we have to be careful of this kind of pride and self-conceit, right? Buddhism teaches us to always be mindful of the self before we start thinking highly of ourselves and start blaming and judging other people. It's very easy to look outward because our eyes are made to look outward. It's very actually counterintuitive for us to look inward. And in fact, we despise looking at ourselves in this way because we don't want to see those parts about ourselves. But there is someone who is kind enough to tell us, hey, your fly is open. That person is the Buddha, right? And the Buddha is our true friend, saying to us out of genuine concern and out of genuine care, your fly is open, right? And to check yourself before you check anybody else, right? And we are humbled, when we are humbled to see our true selves by listening to the Buddha Dharma, we are then able to see a path for us to walk on, which in turn gives us the appropriate courage and the audacity to live in this world of confusion. At the beginning of this talk, I gave the Gosandai, which is the sacred words of, that I cited from a scripture or a sutra, and it read, I'll say it again, Shakyamuni Buddha, out of vast benevolence, instructed Queen Vaidehi, leading her to select from among all the lands manifested in the pedestal of light, Amida's world of happiness. Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, Queen Vaidehi criticizes the Buddha for being the cousin of the evil Devadatta, right? And out of ignorance, she accuses the Buddha for her suffering simply because he was the cousin of Devadatta, right? But even with this egregious accusation, Shakyamuni Buddha led her to aspire to be born in Amida's Pure Land. Shakyamuni Buddha guided her, right? And he taught her a path to spiritual liberation despite her scathing criticism against him. In other words, Queen Vaidehi is us. She represents the sentient being in this story. We are so engulfed in our blind passions that we tend to criticize, that we tend to loathe and ridicule or look down on truth, which is the Buddha Dharma. Instead, we often give credence to such things as the mighty dollar, wealth, fame, power, or social status. But these are all things you cannot take with you when you die. Right? In fact, if you are lucky to make it to old age in this life, none of these things matter much at that point, right? Because why? Because you can't take those things with you when you die, right? So it's like kind of like putting money in a coffin, like why? Why would you do that, right? Yet despite all of this bickering and ridicule that humans tend to do towards the Buddha, on the other hand, just waits. The Buddha knows to wait for us. The Buddha knows that we don't know and is compassionate enough to wait for us until we do come to know. That is how we define the Buddha's benevolence. So I would like to conclude today by saying, check your fly every so often. No, I'm speaking metaphorically, of course, but I mean to say self-reflection based on the Buddha Dharma or the Buddha's teachings is very important, especially in this day and age when we get so much of our news and our worldview gets reinforced by the things we want to see through our Facebook feeds or our YouTube recommendations, right? And the people we associate with. It is becoming much, much easier now to see the world we want to see it and not the world that we have to see. This world that is presented to us is not the truth, is what Buddhism is trying to get us to understand. We need something that is outside of ourselves, something which we can rely on wholeheartedly with absolute trust, that tells us like it is. That is our true friend, the Buddha. Right? So let us put our hands together in Gassho for the teaching of truth that grounds us in this all too turbulent world of delusion. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Please join me in Gassho. Shakyamuni Buddha, out of vast benevolence, instructed Queen Vaidehi, leading her to select from among all the lands manifested in the pedestal of light, Amida's world of happiness. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Namo Amida Butsu.